Alright, so for purposes of this tutorial, we are going to focus strictly on the unit card. Again, in our attempt to take this game piecemeal so that hopefully the steep learning curve doesn't seem too daunting and overwhelming, I'm going to take it piece by piece. So I'm going to focus on the unit card this tutorial, and next tutorial we'll focus on army, organization, and so forth. So currently I have Hinman's Brigade clicked. So let's go through these different cards. What are they? Now, don't let the pictures fool you. I find that the pictures really are only beneficial for kind of giving an idea of the general makeup of the particular card. So for example, this is obviously artillery. This is a supply train, which provides supplies, food, ammunition to your stack here. This is obviously cavalry, and this is obviously infantry. But beyond that, and then these are commanders. Beyond that, don't take anything to heart, right? Because there's a whole lot of information buried behind these images here that could drastically affect their effectiveness on the battlefield, which is what this tutorial is going to focus on for you. Now, one thing that AGEOD has done is that when you hover over a lot of these different things, it definitely helps you out in kind of giving you some information about this particular card. So let's go from left to right. So first, these little hashtag marks over here are important because this tells you how many elements are in this card. So again, this card doesn't represent one infantry, I guess, unit, right? This card actually represents 5 subunits, if that makes sense. And hopefully it'll make sense here in a moment. So notice there's 5 hashtags here. Go over to the right, and oh my goodness, there's 5 little squares over here. So these are what are called elements. This is what makes up your card. So if that's a little confusing, think of it this way. You click Hinman's Brigade, you go over here, here's the card, this outline right here, the 4 corners of this card, and what is contained within the 4 corners of that card are 5 elements. All right, better known as regiments and a battery. So I guess another way to think about it is in the Civil War, the construct of a military organization was basically you had companies, then you had regiments, and then you had brigades. So brigades controlled, 3, 4, 5, 6 regiments. That's kind of what's going on here. So in Hinman's Brigade, we have 5 elements or regiments or whatever you want to call them. The manual calls them elements, so we're going to stick with that. And the total composition of these 5 elements equals 149 power. So again, keeping with the left to right, you have the hashtags here. So it means we have 5 elements. And then within that 5 elements, if you hover over the 149 number, which I'll explain in a moment, it'll show you those 5 elements. So notice there we have the 3rd Confederate, the 7th Arkansas, the 6th Arkansas, 2nd Arkansas, and the Sweats Mississippi Battery. Those are your 5. And the 5 combine for a power of 149, which I'll go into combat power in a moment. But just bear in mind that for your unit card, you have these 5 different elements that make up that particular card. Okay? Hopefully you're with me. Now, and when you hover over, it'll show you those particular cards. And then if you're curious for more information about those particular elements, you can go over and actually click them. So the 3rd Confederate, as you can see, this is the 3rd Confederate. It'll give you information about that particular element. Or if you want an overall picture, again, you can click Hinman's Brigade, and it'll give you a total overall number or picture for that actual unit card. I can tell you really getting the down and dirty information for these elements. So go into, say, 6th Arkansas, go into combat, mobility, all set. It doesn't really do you any good because I don't think you could actually take these elements out of the card. They're kind of like built into it. So So really, for purpose of your understanding of your total construct of your military, I think clicking the card and then clicking the little icon here on the top right corner, that's more than enough to get down the nitty-gritty about the details that you'd like to know about that card, which I will cover in a moment. So again, to summarize, these little hashtag thingies over here represent the number of elements in this particular card, which then add up to your total combat power. Now, your combat power is basically, I guess, the strength of your particular card. So if you have a 149 card go up against somebody else's 149 card, it doesn't mean that they have 5 elements in their card as well. It might just mean that they have like maybe 2 elite elements in that. And because their elite elements are so epic, that adds up to 149. So just bear in mind that the power just says basically this is how effective this card will be on the battlefield, either through brute force or through elite units or through a combination of both. This particular card is a combination of both. Why? Because it has a line infantry, which is really the backbone of your military. They're basically the traditional, the regulars, right? The ones who are like, hey, I'm in the military, I'm active duty, I got the training, all that sort of thing. But then you have the conscripts, which is the C. Notice there when you hover over it, it says 7th Arkansas Infantry Conscripts. These guys are basically a little bit better than militia. So they're not as good as your line infantry, but then you have 2 other elements of line infantry and then an artillery battery of 6-pound artillery, which is the smallest and weakest of your artillery batteries you'd be able to purchase. And so that's why I say it's kind of a mix, right? You don't have any like uber line infantry in this particular brigade, but you get line infantry, which are pretty good. All right, so that is your elements, and then hovering over that will give you the total strength and kind of explain to you your combat power. Before I get into this little information tab, let's go over your unit strength and your cohesion. So this red bar here are the number of hits that this particular unit can take before it's wiped off the battlefield. So notice here when I click the little X here, which represents infantry, it tells you the number of hits that this card can take before it's wiped off the battlefield. You can suffer hits any variety of ways, whether it's fatigue, illness, battle, or lack of supply. And this is basically the representation of, I guess, troop loss, for lack of a better way to describe it. Then you have this blue icon, which is your cohesion, which is basically your organizational level. So basically a brigade cannot function without organization, right? Because you've got 600 men in this brigade, as denoted here. And so if you have 600 men who are not organized, they're not going to be able to do anything, right? So your cohesion represents how well organized your 600 men are. The lower the cohesion goes, the less effective these 600 men will be in battle. How do you suffer a cohesion loss? It's basically moving through rough terrain, engaging in combat, suffering from illness or fatigue. All those different things will affect your cohesion. So, all that being said, cohesion is very, very important, because you can have an army of 30,000 troops, but if they don't fight as one, if they fight as 30,000 individuals, they're not going to beat an army of 15,000 fighting as one, if you catch my drift. So, all right, so that's what these little bars here represent. Notice anytime I hover over the top right icon for that particular unit, or rather, what are we talking? We were calling it we'll just call it a unit or a card. It'll tell you the number of troops, the number of cavalry, and the number of artillery in that particular card. That can be helpful because it'll give you a quick idea of the construction of that particular card. Notice here for the cavalry, if we put it over there, which I did, but now it's not doing it. That's kind of weird. Anyways, if you look at the cavalry card there, we only have 600 cavalry. We don't have any artillery, we don't have any infantry. So that's a quick way to kind of tell you the makeup of that particular unit. Okay, so we've covered the little hashtags here. We've covered the top right thing telling you kind of basically what unit it is. The X represents the infantry. A 1 across is the cavalry, and the little dot is your artillery, and the circle is your supply trains. And then stars represent your generals, which we're going to address in a different tutorial. Number below tells you your combat power, which basically says how effective this particular card is in battle. It does not represent the number of troops in that card, because as you can see, we have 149 combat power, but 2,472 infantry, 16 cavalry, and 8 artillery. And then the bottom right represents your number of hits you can take, as well as your cohesion. And then what will happen is that when you move this particular unit, you'll suffer either some hits or some cohesion loss, which I will demonstrate in a moment. Before I do that, I want to show you the actual card. So we're just going to do the total. This is the total composite overview for the card. Now, you can get the same information for each element broken down, but I don't know if there's really a whole lot of information there for you unless you really want to dissect things. I don't do it, but I don't know how into it you are. Okay, so we're going to take the Hinman's Brigade. We're going to click the X there. It's going to bring this little menu up here. These are the different things. Okay, so first firepower. Okay, well, let's go overview. Overview is going to give you just a basic overview for that unit and kind of how effective it is. Combat power is superior, speed is fast, passability is average, all that sort of stuff. Okay, so that gives you it's a basic breakdown. If you just want a quick eyes on how effective this particular card is. However, if you click combat, this is a little more confusing. Now, it took me a while to really figure out what all of these numbers mean. So firepower represents 9 and 15. What does that mean? 9 offense, 15 defense. That means that when this unit is used in an offensive manner, you're going to get a 9 firepower out of that particular brigade. However, if you're using this brigade in a defensive manner, so the Union is attacking and Hinman's brigade is defending, and you're in a defensive posture like we are down here, then he's going to get a 15 firepower. This makes sense, right? Because this takes into account entrenchments, the opportunity to get behind, some fence line or a sunken road or a stone wall, whatever that might be. So bear that in mind, that firepower is directly effective or ineffective based on the posture that you are engaging in combat. Range dictates how far your unit can fire. So this particular unit has a range of 3, which is pretty good. I want to say this unit only has, so he's got a range of 3, which is very good. Range of 3, but artillery has a range of 6. What does this mean? This means your artillery is going to get some shots off before the enemy is in range to shoot back. So if you have superiority in numbers in artillery, you may be able to inflict significant casualties on the enemy before they are even in range to fire. But anyways, let's go back here. Rate of fire, this basically dictates how quickly they can fire. I don't know if this is like 2 times per day or how this is calculated, but you can just compare this up against your other troops and figure out, hey, is that good or bad? I want to say rate of fire is probably 2 or 3, so if you have a 2, that's not too bad. Discipline, pretty self-explanatory. That's their ability to maintain a line of battle and not flee from the enemy. Now, range damage. So your range damage on the offensive side is only 2, but your range damage on the defensive side is 12, which again tells you that this unit is very effective in a defensive posture, not so great on an offensive posture. Assault and assault damage. Now, these deal with like hand-to-hand combat. So as the battle progresses, and if you take a battle and you dissect it, you'll eventually see this. Each turn represents a new phase of the battle in that particular day. So if you get to like round 3 or 4, they're probably hand-to-hand combat by then, potentially at least, right? So then the assault damage and the assaults come into play. Firepower is ignored, range is ignored, and instead you look at your assault and your assault damage to determine how effective this unit is going to be in a hand-to-hand combat situation. So in this case, it's 10 offense, 10 defense, so there's no difference there. And then the damage is 15. So again, you can compare that to other units that you may want to build and kind of figure out, hey, how effective is my overall composition here in a line, hand-to-hand battle sort of thing. All right, so frontage, this deals with the number of troops you can put in a particular region. So the more troops that you're fielding on the battlefield, the more likely that you're going to have troops that don't actually engage in the battle are more kind of like in a reserve status. And then depending on how long the battle goes on, is the more likely those reserves could get in. But if it's a really quick battle, those reserves may never get into the battle. And so you may have kind of a Thermopylae sort of situation where you have the overwhelming numbers, but because you're fighting in a region that has small frontage, you're only able to get in, a handful of your troops. So one way to figure out, how much frontage your troops is going to take up is looking at the frontage here. I'm going to take the tactical aspect of battles in another episode, which will be a lot easier for you to figure the frontage out. Just know that if you're looking at the map and you say, hey, frontage is this, and how did it come up with that number, you can go through your army and actually look at each portion and it'll tell you. So for example, for this unit card, in open terrain, they only take up 4 frontage. However, in closed terrain like mountains and hills, they take up 18 frontage, which is considerably more. And so if you have a couple of cards like this, it won't take very long to be in a situation where you're using up all the frontage and you still have a lot of troops available that'll only be in reserve. Experience, self-explanatory. They can get this either through combat or through generals who will train certain types of units. Usually line infantry won't get trained, but conscripts or militia can get trained. And then hits we talked about already, and then the number of men is right here. Mobility, pretty self-explanatory, that'll tell you. And then it'll also tell you the supply that this particular card needs per turn to stay in full supply, as well as the ammo that it needs to have like a full cartridge stock available in the event of combat. Now, another quick way to get all of that information we just went over is to hover over it. So again, if you want the real nitty-gritty, you click that top right one, that'll give you all that information. But really, for the most part, you're going to find yourself looking at it just like I am right now, like this, or hovering over it really quick to be like, how much supply does this card need to be in full supply? Wow, it needs 20 supply and 24 ammo. That's an expensive card. Maybe I need to put that in a different region, or maybe I need to put that in a different theater of war or whatever, right? That'll give you some good information. Also, that cohesion, it'll tell you right there what your cohesion is. And then the command cost, which I'll talk about in a different tutorial, but just hovering over that will give you everything I just told you. I just cover this extra stuff in case you wanted the real serious down and dirty of that particular card. Alright, so we took Cleyburn's brigade, took him out of the chain of command, put him across the river, and now he is here. So if you recall previously, he had a power of I think like 146, 149, and now he is down to 92. Now notice here, it says the potential combat power for this particular card is 130, but we're at 92 on the battlefield. So why is that? Well, there's a variety of reasons. One primarily associated with combat penalty, which I'm covering in a separate tutorial. But I want you to know for this particular tutorial are a couple things. One, the combat combat power that you see on the map for your particular card does not necessarily represent the total strength for that card. If you want to know how strong that card can be, basically what its potential is, look down here. So 130, right? Now 130 is his baseline, and then obviously it can go higher than that, which we saw over here. But just bear in mind that it can be higher than what's on the battlefield. So why is this 92? Well, one, because we took out the chain of command and we're now suffering this command penalty, which again I'm going to cover in a separate tutorial. But for this video, what I want you to know is notice here the cohesion has been decreased. That's because we went across the river. So think about it this way. What is more effective? What is a more effective fighting force? What is this? About 2,500 troops who are fresh and have been able to sit in their camp and eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day for a week, or a unit that spent the last 2 weeks marching across foresty, muddy terrain as well as a river, right? That's what the cohesion represents. This is a force that just did that. They marched through mud, forest, and a river for the last 11 days. They've only had 3 days to recover because it's a 14-day turn. And so this is what you've got here. So notice here when you hover over it, says average cohesion 67 out of 76. 76 is this total cohesion it can have. It's recovering 1.40 per day. That's what variation means. That's how much cohesion it's recovering. I'll go into these different tabs here in more detail in another video. Just know that if you change these around here, so we go to passive, for example, notice it goes to 240 per day. So that'll recover your cohesion really fast. But for this video, just realize that your power on the battlefield here is affected by a variety of things, notably, basically, how hard you run your troops on the battlefield. Like if you're going to force march them or move them around through rough terrain, they're going to take a hit on their total effectiveness on the battlefield, which is denoted here by this little area here, which is your cohesion, and then also your hits. So one of our elements took a little bit of hits either through illness or death. And so that's why the red there is a little bit low. Finally, let me conclude this video by saying the green identifies the supply that unit is at. So once that green gets all the way down to 0, you're in trouble. Your cohesion is going to start suffering pretty significantly, so are your hits. So always keep close eye on your unit's green meter there. Because once it gets completely depleted, you're going to be in some big trouble. I'm going to cover this in another video, but I might as well say it here. If you click on your particular card and you look down at the bottom right, and if you hover over the little teepee looking thing, that's your supply. So it says your current stock is 20 points. That means you have 20 points of supply. You have 100% of your maximum food and water. And you use 10 per turn, so simple math, addition, subtraction, division, whatever you want to use. You get 2 turns, which is 2 14-day periods of time that you can remain in the field without additional supply. That means that after one 14-day, you'll be down to half green. After another 14-day, you'll be out of green. And then your cohesion and your hits will start suffering from there. Your ammo tells you how much ammo you have. So your current stock is 24 and your usage is 12 per battle. Now that obviously could be different than your supply because perhaps you engage in multiple battles in a turn or whatever it might be. So again, those are kind of separate. I'd say usually they're going to track the same. Occasionally they may be a little bit separate, but it's worth noting. Look at that percentage, keep an eyes on that, and then your hide value and your detection value, which I'll cover in a separate video. So hopefully that very quick video about your particular unit Not all this other crap that we got going on here, but just the card, just the unit, helps explain what all this fun stuff is. So thank you, and check out the next tutorial where we talk about army organization.